covering the Lincoln Road and having an ability to look at how safely we are opening. The advantage we have, in fact, most of the other bits have, is we are outdoor spaces. As in outdoor spaces, there will be a lot more safety and the ability for our people to come in and go through stores without having to go through an indoor environment. The same is true when our cafes open. We have considerable outdoor seating. We've been working with the city of Miami Beach, who have been very cooperative in establishing more outdoor seating for restaurants so that social distancing is possible while still keeping a broad enough client base for our restaurants.
And just to piggyback off of what Stephen shared, similarly in the city of Miami, we've been working closely with our city manager, our commissioners, and the various departments throughout the city, including the Miami Parking Authority, where today we announced that the first hour of parking is free to all patrons, all visitors, and there's reduced parking fees for the second hour and thereafter. So we are trying to remove all of the barriers that potentially we can control to make the neighborhoods that much more appealing. But to Stephen's point, from a safety standpoint, all of the measures are going to be uniformly deployed if everybody follows the same operating handbook from Miami-Dade County. And we also had national media and international media come to the neighborhood today. So we've been really excited about that. Raises awareness not only for Wynwood, but for the South Florida tourism economy, which right now is obviously hit a pause. So we're hopeful that locals will come out, and over time we'll see an uptick in domestic tourism. Since it's sunny and warm here, typically this is our low season, but we hope that same heat and sun is what's going to attract others from across the state and across the country to come visit South Florida, when otherwise they may have been going to Europe or Latin America or elsewhere for their summer vacation. So I think we have some optimism that we'll start to see things somewhat come back together again. But we are also working with our partners at the city to increase dining capacity outdoors, as well as on private property where restaurants may have their own surface parking lots and patio spaces and setbacks, because our sidewalks in Wynwood, as I'm sure all of you that have been to the neighborhood know, are quite narrow because of our industrial history. So we've been working around all of those things to make it that much more possible for our restaurants that are at 50% to actually make it to 50%. I think one thing to point out, when you hear 50%, it doesn't mean that the restaurant has the capability, by spacing out its tables and limiting its seats per table, to still meet that threshold. So that's why you're seeing an increase in cooperation between various cities and their parking departments to find ways, creative ways, to bring more seating online that's still safe and distance, to give more opportunity to our business partners to succeed.
One of the things we're also doing is our ambassadors are shifting their focus, where before they were helping the visitors find certain establishments, give out maps, and help guide them through the areas, including taking pictures. Now the focus on safety. They'll be providing masks for people who don't have it. They'll be working on social distancing requirements. They'll be helping anyone out who has any concerns as to what they need to do to keep safe and protected.
One thing that Albert brought up that I thought it was interesting is collaboration. How are the bids, working together so that some of these initiatives, get recreated in the other bids, and we're all working together so that it's more of a regional effort to bring the tourism back to our neighborhoods.
I think.
Sure. So go ahead, Stephen.
No, go ahead, please.
No, so I know our two executive directors, Tim from the Lincoln Road bid and Manny from the Wynwood bid, are regularly in contact with one another. The Wynwood bid is the largest in the state of Florida by geographic size, and Manny, prior to being the executive director of the Wynwood bid, similarly was the director over at the Coconut Grove bid. So he's kind of the grandfather, if you will. He's really young, so if he's watching, I don't want him to think I'm calling him old or anything like that. But he's been around for a while, and he's kind of been the unofficial, go-to guy I've made it clear to him he needs to be as available to them as he is to us. Because you're right, Martine, as we collaborate, we're all going through the same challenges, and we could probably lean on each other to find those solutions, especially now when we have to get really creative and be very nimble and quick on our feet to implement. So I think with time, we will probably see a lot more coordination than we historically have had to solicit, but that's a great thing, because like everyone says now, we are all in this together, and we certainly are. And as BIDS in particular, we are that last mile of service providing to our communities. Cities are obviously now being strained with their budgets. They're not getting as much sales tax revenue and bed tax revenue that they depend on and other fees. So thankfully, our bids, I think, largely from what I understand, are still well financed and on good footing. So I think we can play a very big role in ensuring continuity of safety and security and marketing support for our respective neighborhoods.
Bids are evolutionary. When we started, and Albert went through the same process as myself, it wasn't easy to get so many property owners. All of us have egos, and to get us to understand that working together rather than working apart was in everyone's best interest. And I think this unfortunate incident is going to further us in progressing to an entire community where the bids who have worked together will work even closer together to help our community and help the development. In addition, we have property owners that own property in several of the bids, so there really is an interconnection and importance for all of Miami-Dade County to progress and develop.
I agree. Talking about the specific neighborhoods like Wynwood or Lincoln Road, I think each one being so different has their own unique challenges. Like, for example, Wynwood is a very nightlife-oriented neighborhood, or Lincoln Road, it's all about the sidewalk cafes and the pedestrian experience. Can you just outline or highlight some of the unique challenges that you face in crafting a plan for reopening your specific district?
For us, one of the issues has been the convention center, which we've had issues with as it was redeveloped. And just as it's reopening, we're now going through it being closed again. So that's going to be an issue that we just have to wait and see to develop. I think that when it comes down to cafe seating, which is Lincoln Road, that is to our advantage. We have a mile of roads, they're very wide, there's a tremendous medium, and we'll have an advantage to provide a tremendous outdoor seating and be able to allow people to really see and be seen while still being safe.
And Martine, while we're certainly known for our nightlife, we're also a daytime district. People may not realize this, but we don't just play in Wynwood. There's actually a lot of work going on in the neighborhood, more so than ever before, perhaps. All these warehouses that have been converted not just to nightlife venues, but also offices. They've been coming back online as well. So we do have a daytime group that is very much coming back to the neighborhood. But we obviously do suffer from the decrease in the nightlife sector. There's no secret there, and similar to Miami Beach and other communities that have bars and those types of venues that are probably going to be at the last mile of the reopening schedule. So our hearts and thoughts are with them because they're not a part of the immediate phases of reopening, but play a very important role in our local economy. But our restaurants and retail partners, obviously, over the next 7 days, as they reopen, we do expect an increase in pedestrian foot traffic. So in Wynwood, we're working closely with our police department, our fire team, code enforcement, and we also have a team of ambassadors similar to Lincoln Road, where we'll be providing masks, educating, as well as ensuring that all of our business owners are complying as they should, so that we can continue to move forward safely and successfully.
I'd also like to reiterate what Albert said. It's very important to understand that the government has been key partners with us in this. They're really trying to help us. They're working with us, and we couldn't be more grateful for what they're doing.
Great. This has been kind of a deja vu moment, being involved in Wynwood and going through the Zika outbreak. And this is for you, Albert. How does this compare to the Zika outbreak? And, what are some of the learning lessons from that experience that you guys are using today?
Well, I never thought I'd be talking about Zika 4 years later or 5 years later, but it's an excellent question because, thanks to that experience, not that we were happy we had to go through that experience, we learned a lot of lessons, and we actually created an emergency protocol at the time because we weren't sure if we were going to be dealing with other Zika outbreaks in the future. And at the time, nobody in South Florida, Miami-Dade, city of Miami, even at the state level, had ever had to deal with anything like this. I mean, if you recall, Wynwood had a travel advisory warning issued by the CDC. Now today, we're used to hearing this, but back then, we had never heard of anything like that. It was actually the first time in the history of the country that a travel advisory was set for an area within the United States. And unfortunately, Wynwood had the displeasure of being that, I guess, guinea pig, if you will, about all the things that now we're hearing more often, which is everything, including social distancing and travel advisory warning. So back on March 12th, which was actually our last regularly scheduled board meeting, we initiated our emergency protocols. It was the last time that we met as a community, and shortly thereafter, you started hearing orders from Miami-Dade County and the various cities to start the gradual closure and limiting the occupancy levels. So as a bid, one of the things we did is we started already making strong recommendations to our business owners ahead of those schedules, already anticipating what was going to come next because we had unfortunately already experienced it. And we're very proactive in our messaging to get all of our business owners ready and stocking up, and also in particular to start working on realigning their business, particularly in the restaurant space, to the takeout delivery model. We were speaking daily with our city manager and our elected officials of the city to also guide them on a lot of those protocols, because we were the only neighborhood that had to experience that within the city of Miami, thankfully at the time.
There was a guy who came in here to be finished.
But we had that experience, so I think that gave us a little bit of a head start. But I can't say that none of us had the foresight of what would happen next, as far as the magnitude of the closures and the economic devastation that followed. But similarly, our marketing plan and our reopening plan is also coming out of that protocol, because as you may remember, after Zika hit, literally there was nobody coming to the neighborhood. Our streets were empty, sidewalks were empty, businesses were open, but nobody was coming inside to shop or to visit our, murals throughout the neighborhood. So, we've been able to work through all of that. And I think there's some crosstalk going on. So if you're not speaking, please be on mute as a courtesy. But yeah, so I think largely, Martine, that whole experience with Zika was a learning opportunity that now is beginning to pay dividends for the first time.
Hey guys, just a quick thing. So we're having back-end difficulties. That's why you're getting.
This might be Big M.
Excuse
Take
me.
Big M and put it on the side.
If you're not on
It's Big M because of all the documentation.
yourself.
That's all we had to do.
So we're having
Could
back-end.
everyone that's not on the panel please mute their cells?
So yeah, in order for us to keep the panelists unmuted, we need to actually unmute everyone and then remute them. So that's what's happening here. We apologize. It's just totally frozen on the back end. So it's the first time this has happened. Regarding Tatiana and or anyone else from the Coral Gables bid, if you got that request to unmute yourself, please take it so that we can hear from you. And if not, let me know directly and we'll try it again. So sorry for the interruption and please proceed.
It was an interesting question, Martin, because I hadn't focused on that. But Zika was really sort of the canary in the coal mine, telling us that we may be heading to a new normal. And I think more than Zika, because I unfortunately had to live through 9/11 in New York and the consequences, this will be a new normal. We will recover, we will do well, people will be out and socializing, but there will be a slightly different attitude. And we as BIDS have to try to direct that and work with our constituents and our businesses to help make that new normal as positive as possible. And I've been very impressed with our businesses, how well informed they are, and how quickly they are reopening now.
Yeah, I agree. One thing, are you guys looking at other cities? Are there any models that we're looking at of how to deal, on a neighborhood level with, this type of closures? How do we direct businesses to operate? Is that a conversation being had at the bid level?
So we've been, for those of you that don't know, BIDS are not exclusive to South Florida. They were actually born from Stephen's old stomping grounds in New York. That's where the BIDS really started to take shape and where they were born. Now there's thousands of them around the country and around the world. So there is a network in the community of BIDS that we tap into It's an international downtown association that we're all members of as BIDS. We have been looking to our partners throughout the state. In particular, Tampa is a city that I know our mayor and our city manager, as well as BID leadership in Wynwood, has been looking at as a kind of a guidepost. They didn't have to go through the closure schedules like the Tri-County area did here in South Florida. So they kind of had a head start, and it's been a good litmus test for us to see what's worked and what needs a little bit more fine tuning. So it kind of gives us a opportunity to watch and see how these different protocols and procedures are being not only implemented, but also enforced. Because that's the key part to this. We can put out guidebooks and posters and, all these wonderful mechanisms to communicate the message. But if there's no enforcement component to it, psychologically, I just think the people that are certainly concerned about their health and want to follow the instructions are going to probably think twice before leaving their homes or leaving any environments where they feel that they're in control to be exposed to things that perhaps they might not be convinced are ready. So, we've been telling all of our business operators, obviously, to comply, not just because it's what you have to do, what you must do, but it's the only way that you're going to get your patrons back. I tell our restaurant partners as of late, think of this example. Say you're a patron and you have your favorite pizza place, and you probably have a list in your mind. I'm not going to pick favorites on this call, but for example, let's say it's Lucali, Miami Beach. I'm cheating on Wynwood already. But if Lucali was your favorite, but your second favorite was Mr. 01, who also has locations throughout Wynwood and Miami Beach and elsewhere, just for the sake of an example, let's say they took measures a little bit more stricter and they're your number 2 choice. Well, guess what becomes your number 1 choice now? That other operator. So while your product has to be top notch, your service has to be top notch, now you also have the challenge of convincing your patrons that you're taking their health and safety that much more serious, and maybe even more so than they do in their own homes. And that's going to, I think, instill confidence and also renew a sense of loyalty and patronage. So that's what we've been working on with our partners to make sure that they embed that into their service. They all have the baseline requirements. It's the ones that I think go above and beyond are the ones that are in the long run going to be rewarded with repeat business.
Good citizenship and good business go hand in hand. And unfortunately, some business owners don't understand it, but most do. And what we pride ourselves on, and what's very important for all of us, is to establish that we are safe zones, that we are places where you can go, you can be outside, you can be with people while being safe and practicing social distancing and not putting yourself and, more importantly, other people, your friends, your relatives, your elderly relatives, the non-millennials at risk. And I think that we are accomplishing that, and I think we'll all work very diligently to get there.
There's one thing that I want to add that I think we both share in common between Lincoln Road and Coral Gables as well as Wynwood, is that we're all outdoor-oriented neighborhoods. So not to knock the shopping malls and the shopping centers, because they play a very big role as well in our economy, but I think we have the advantage of being open air. Certainly in the summer months where there's a little bit of rain, there's lots of sun for sure, and a lot of warm, temperatures to bring people back. And we're seeing a dramatic increase, I know, in both in Wynwood and in Miami Beach, of people just riding their bicycles and going for walks, because obviously they're all feeling cabin fever. And I think we stand to benefit because in both cases, in Lincoln Road in particular and in Wynwood, it's such a large, expansive area that you don't have to be indoors to have the full experience. Actually, you can dine outdoors, you can walk around outdoors, you can see art outdoors, and you have all those same attributes both on Lincoln Road and in Wynwood. So we think that's gonna also help us get a little bit of a head start than in other communities that may be more inward and indoor oriented.
There has been a number of studies showing that the risks are much greater if you're in an indoor environment where air recirculates than an outdoor environment. So it's definitely an advantage. And when you look at Wynwood, when you look at Lincoln Road, these are very exciting areas where people just walking can feel free again, that they're out again, that there's some excitement again, and that they're part of a community.
So I want to shift the conversation a little bit because, as we all know, it's no secret that some of the small businesses and even the bigger businesses in our district, are feeling the pain. So I wanted to just hear from you guys. What are some ways that we as consumers can better support the local businesses in our districts?
Well, I think the biggest thing to start with is to start with restaurants and with the shops. Especially for us, we have no national restaurant chains. We have a lot of local restaurants that count on people, and restaurants do not have high margins. So I encourage people to go out to support the restaurants, whether it's being sitting in the outdoor cafes, taking out. It's very important to support these smaller businesses and help them through this.
I agree.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome.
Oh, you can hear me.
Yes.
My apologies. If I can add a few things to what Stephen just said, in Coral Gables, obviously we have a lot of local small mom and pop shops and restaurants, and the best way to support them is to shop with them in person, online, curbside. They've made so many accommodations to make sure their customers feel as best and as safe as they possibly could by taking so many precautionary measures, that they're making very creative, or they're taking very creative approaches to try to continuing to serve the community as best as they can. And even from a restaurant perspective, they were able to pivot really quickly to be able to turn curbside and, takeout and delivery options. One of the things that helps them more is if you patronize them directly. There's wonderful third-party services, and no one discounts and no one says don't use them. But if you have an opportunity to be able to use them direct by making a phone call to your favorite restaurant, that's obviously preferred over a third party where there's extra fees involved. But shopping and dining and continuing to shop and dine, even if you're still doing curbside and you're averse to coming into one of the establishments, they will more than greatly appreciate the local support.
Yeah, that's definitely very important in this time. Keeping, in talking about small businesses, is there any like local economic stimulus being offered for small businesses that you're aware of? It could be in the form of grants or, arts organization that you think, it may be interesting to mention and make people aware of?
Sure. I mean, I'm happy to, there's a long list, so I'm sure my partners here on the call will be able to amend, but most recently, Miami-Dade County just opened up a $5 million loan program that's forgivable, and it's funded by federal dollars. I know the various cities throughout Miami-Dade County, all the individual cities have their own loan programs. Some of them are grant programs as well. Both Miami Beach and City of Miami, and I believe Coral Gables as well, now has those up and running. And of course, there's a variety of other private sector programs that have been set up through nonprofits, including the United Way. There's also one that's a partnership between FIU and the South Beach Food and Wine Festival organizers that are specific to the hospitality sector. So, I mean, there are a multitude of opportunities out there if you want to help as well. There's multiple people that are going hungry. I think we need to talk about that for a minute. If we don't, I think it would be a disservice. Just yesterday, Wynwood hosted its third, food bank program in partnership with Feed America, City of Miami Mayor Francis Suarez and Moish Mana. And I can tell you the cars, the lines that form for these food programs start 7, 8, 9, 10 hours before they start the programs. In the middle of the night, people are lining up in their cars. And these are local people. These are people that you probably walk past or have served you at a restaurant, or were a clerk at a retail store where you once patronized before all of this started, and they're going hungry. So I'm also very proud of some of our restaurant groups who have also not only been dishing out free meals, such as Brad Kilgore from Alter, but many others are just giving free product to those food drive programs. So there's a variety of different ways to get involved. We understand that some people have lost their jobs or have been furloughed and don't have the funds available to give away, but you can also give your time. if you feel safe enough to go out there and be a volunteer.
I'd like to continue with what Albert said, particularly with Brad Kilgore. I've been involved with an organization called Food Rescue USA, and unfortunately, they were going to have their first gala at one of Brad's restaurants, which was canceled because of the virus. What they do is they rescue excess food from restaurants, hotels, and that, of course, is dropped and given to shelters like the Miami Homeless Mission, Camila's House. For anyone who has restaurants who want to donate or get involved with this program, please feel free to reach out to the Lincoln Run Business Improvement District. We will give you the connection. But we're very fortunate. We have problems, and they're serious problems, but there are a lot of people who have far more serious problems. And it is very important at this point in time to have compassion for the entire community and people who, through no fault of their own, are in very bad shape. I've felt this for years. We've all been fortunate. We've born in the right country, the right parents. We've worked hard. We've established things. But there are a lot of people who are not fortunate and are down on their luck for no reason of their own, especially today. And I think it behooves all of us to step up. And I'm really glad you mentioned that, Albert.
Yeah, most definitely. Shifting the conversation a little bit, both Wynwood, Coral Gables, and Lincoln Road are main destinations for events. Do we know when the next events are planned, or when events are going to be allowed, or is it too soon to even ask that question?
Unfortunately, I think it's too soon. We just have no idea. We do not, I mean, one of the problems, we're all facing the fact, particularly Wynwood and Lincoln Road, that we are very tourist driven. And right now there is no tourism. The hotels are still closed. The restaurants are just starting to reopen. It's going to be a while before this recovery starts in earnest.
That's right. I mean, it's definitely going to be one of the last tier sectors to reopen. If you remember when we were beginning to close businesses, we first started suspending large events like the Ultra Music Festival and the Calle Festival. And then subsequently, we started to see the occupancy limits being introduced into all of the establishments until we got to a complete shutdown. So similarly, we're going to be seeing that happen in reverse. So those large congregations of people coming together, I think it's going to be a ways away and largely dependent on how the rate of infection is controlled and managed as we start to reopen our economy. But that doesn't mean that we can't get creative and find other ways to bring people back to our neighborhood. So for example, we're working together with the city of Miami and Manor Wynwood to bring a drive-in movie theater concept to the neighborhood. We still have some vacant parcels of land. I know, Martine, you know the neighborhood very well. So these are things that we're working out. I know Miami Beach also recently started to reintroduce the concept as well of drive-in movie theaters. So I think you're going to see a lot of experimentation where people are still going to be in some sort of safety bubble, in this case in their cars, but coming together in safe ways to have shared experiences. Because right now what we've been limited to, of course, is social media, calls like these to bring us together, and that's okay. But I think you're going to see a gradual lift to the next level. So we're very optimistic and very supportive of those various initiatives as well.
I think people are very excited for that, but it has to be done in a safe manner. The last thing we want to do is to have this reopening backfire and start back on square one.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah, it has to be gradual for sure. What about construction in your districts? Have you seen, this affect any construction, either ongoing or future projects, or what do you expect? This is more, from your personal opinion.
Well, I can tell you in the city of Miami, and I think largely throughout the county, we never saw the construction sector, the development sector shut down. While they had to abide by similar conditions as far as wearing PPE and distancing, they were always deemed as an essential part of the economy. So in Wynwood, for example, where we do have multiple projects under construction, a combination of hotels, mixed use office, retail projects, those have been uninterrupted. In some cases, may even be now slightly ahead of schedule because they haven't been interrupted by the need to accommodate pedestrians and traffic when they do traffic modifications and those kind of things. So we're very, appreciative that that sector was able to operate uninterrupted, because in a neighborhood like Wynwood, which is obviously going still through its rebirth, quite frankly, over the last decade, and looking into the next 10 years, we are making that transition into a 24/7 livable neighborhood where you can not just come and play and have a good time and dine, but also live and work. So, that's been a priority for us for the last 10 years. And thankfully, up until now, we haven't seen massive disruption, but it isn't to say that if this pandemic continues, that there won't be ramifications in the real estate sector. But right now, it's too early to see that hiccup. But I think it's the same across Miami-Dade County.
We've seen construction continues on a lot of stores. We've been fortunate. We have a number of new stores that are opening. And in fact, one exciting concept, Doc Martin, a very upscale shoe store, will be starting operations June 1st. And that construction has continued. We're also working with the city of Miami Beach to hope that we can do some discrete projects that can be done before the road completely reopens.
That's definitely great news. So one last question that I had for you is, what do you think is the most critical change that you anticipate that's going to happen in your district?
You saved the best for last, didn't you?
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be very different for our district than what happens in the entire country.
Yeah.
I think this is the new normal. The question is, social distancing will not be what it is today, but its remnants will continue. Will people shake hands? Will people wear face masks? What will their social behavior? Will they want to go to indoor malls? Do they want to go to outdoor shopping? All of these changes will occur. I think there's going to be a fundamental change in terms of how nonprofits work. We're very proud of our Oolite Arts, the Colony Theater, the New World Symphony, FIU. All of these are going online. All of these are trying to create different, exciting new programs to bring people in. And this has been more than a hiccup. This has been a severe blow to a lot of these institutions, and they will recover and people will come back. But I think we're in for a very new world, and none of us can be really sure what that new world's going to look like. All we can do is work in a very positive, safe manner to get there as quickly as possible.
And just to add to that, I think as a community and as entrepreneurs, we have to look forward and look towards the opportunity that this brings. So, when we were all in our pre-COVID world, we probably had business practices that were kind of pulling us down, and we were ignoring them because times were good. So there was no need to repair things that we didn't perceive to be broken. So I think it's also an opportunity for reinvention and creativity in a level that we've never seen before. And I think when you look at history and you look at periods of time where there's been economic disruption, at the magnitude and level that we're living through now, on the other side, you see an explosion of new businesses, new ideas that are just, going to probably define us for a new generation. So I think when you kind of bring it down to our level, what you're going to probably be seeing over the next several weeks and months is businesses continuing to tinker with their businesses, their format, their product, their service proposition. They're in essence going to be redefining, reinventing themselves to adapt. I don't think things are ever going to go back to the way they were before this all started. And even after, and we're very hopeful that there'll be a vaccine and other means to control the virus, I think a lot of these new changes are going to be probably hardwired into our society. We all look forward to the day where maybe we can handshake and exchange a hug. But I think fundamentally for our economy, there's going to be a lot of things that we'll learn, just like we did as a community coming out of Zika. And I think now as a country and as a world, you're going to see some real adjustments, and hopefully for the better when the world recovers from this pandemic.
And economically, there will be opportunity. New restaurateurs who want exciting concepts, who are priced out of the market, may no longer be priced out. There may not be the same need to have to invest millions of dollars to create a new restaurant, but take existing restaurant spaces, do minor modifications, and open up. I think there's always opportunities where there's problems.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree on that, and we're seeing, you know, all types of different opportunities pop up for people that really, you know, we're not able to compete with some bigger players and spaces that, you know, obviously there was a lot of competition with. So you know, it's a new normal, and we'll see how we evolve as a city, and hopefully we can come together and help, you know, move forward this new evolution. I had some questions from the audience that I wanted to just share real quick with you. So someone was asking, um, do we have an idea of what's the percentage of like all of the businesses reopening, like at least in the retail sector in your district, or is that not, you know, too specific in terms of, you know, knowing an exact number?
Well, we do have that data. So in our retail space today, approximately 70% of our retailers reopened for business at a minimum for curbside pickup delivery service. And in many cases by appointment for in-store visitors to patronize in the store. So we're very confident that over the next several days and weeks, as more of these businesses start to fine tune their spaces to comply with the standards, we should get hopefully to a healthy number closer to 100%. In our restaurant category, currently we have about 57 restaurants that are open, continuing to do their takeout delivery business. Only a handful actually stayed closed over the last 8 weeks, but they'll be reopening in time for next Wednesday. So we're pretty confident that a week from today, all of our restaurants, if not almost most of them, will be up and running with in dining room opportunity, as well as continuation of the curbside delivery model.
We're having significant rollouts. We're having some retail establishments open that we did not expect because they had financial difficulties before this. And we're very optimistic, as Albert said, that we are going to head towards a near full recovery.
Excellent. I think those are all the questions that we have right now. I really thank you, everybody, for participating in this panel. I hope that, you know, like we all mentioned, that we can recover and work together to live this and live and succeed in this new normal. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great week, and let's support small businesses.
Thank you very much, Martin.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.